All my summaries for the 3 new stories in Tales from the Pizzaplex Book 4, those stories being Submechanophobia, Animatronic Apocalypse, and Bobby Dots Part 1, have been completed, so all that's left now is to do a summary on the epilogue of the book. However, I just want to say before we start the summary that today is actually New Year's Eve, the final day of 2022, and I want all of you to just enjoy the last day of the year. And I hope this video contributes to your enjoyment of the day. But without further ado, let's talk about the epilogue of Submechanophobia.
Make me a hero, someone to turn to and rely on their will to win. Make me a hero who puts up a fight both day and night. Oh.
The epilogue, of course, picks up straight from where we left off on the last one, right after Hope is killed in the parts and service room. The 6 teenagers left have rushed out of the room to get away from the thing that had just killed Hope. Adrian had tears rolling down his face because obviously his girlfriend was just killed, and Wade was throwing up some chunks straight onto a severed arm on the ground. Lucia didn't think they really had time for this. Throwing up was an absolutely understandable reaction to what had been going on, but they didn't really have time to be doing this. Joel had to prop up Wade, as Wade was in shock and couldn't really move on his own. Joel dragged him away, saying that he was getting them out of here. Kelly was strangely calm, as she didn't seem to have just witnessed her best friend's body getting dismembered, even though that's exactly what just happened, but she didn't act like that was what just happened, you know? But Lucia thought she was just disassociating as a way to cope with the shock of what was going on. Suddenly, a crunch sounded from the hallway, not too close, but close enough to where they were positioned. All of them followed behind Wade and Joel, who were headed to the back of the hallway. Lucia tried to tell herself that they could hide from the endoskeleton until they could find a way out of here, but she didn't really believe herself. We cut over to Joel's perspective after bringing Wade to the back hallway. He got Wade to pull himself together, and the other 4 came over to them. Kelly suggested that they grab the radio device that she and Lucia had noticed in the office and try to get it working to call for help. The problem, though, was that the office was right next to parts and service, where Hope had been killed. Suddenly, there was a thud that sounded from the dining room, and everyone took off down the hall. Everyone began turning into the employees' lounge except Joel. Joel grabbed Wade to go somewhere else. Adrian asked where he was going, but he didn't answer. He had to go. The endoskeleton's footsteps weren't far behind them, and they seemed to be nearing the hallway's entrance. Joel was determined to reach the end of the hall before the endo spotted them. He didn't care about the radio, he just cared about actually getting out of here. And he was gonna find a way. We cut back to Lucia's perspective. She had to stop Adrian from trying to get Joel and Wade to join them, and just told him to let them go. As the endoskeleton passed by the room they had been in, the lights shut off, promptly turning back on but flickering. Kelly silently told Lucia that they had to get to the radio, and Lucia agreed. Over with Joel and Wade, Joel grabbed a heavy wooden crate and shoved it in front of the door of the room that they were in. He knew it wouldn't stop the endo dead in his tracks, but it could potentially slow it down. Joel had also hoped that the endoskeleton would have gone after the others, as horrible as the thought was. He searched around the room. It was a furnace room, and Wade was mostly sulking, and Joel looked inside the furnace that had been in the room. There had been a rotating fan inside the maintenance chute of the furnace, but when Joel peered beyond it, he was able to see sunlight. He knew this would be their way out. All they had to do was find a way to turn off the fan, and the 2 of them would escape together, leaving the others behind because they didn't know where the endo was. For all they knew, it was right behind the door. Joel assured Wade that once they were out, they would get help for the others, but truthfully, Joel didn't give a crap about the others. Which, I mean, come on, dude. Like, I know Joel is a dick, but he legit doesn't care if the other 4 teenagers die. We then cut over to the perspective of Adrian. The endo seems to have gone farther down the hall, so they seem to be safe to head to the office, and they do. Adrian and Jace use a filing cabinet to block the door. They knew it probably wouldn't be enough to keep the endo back, so he decided to try to open up a vent cover so that they could have an escape route. However, Kelly told him that it was very possible the thing could use the opportunity of the vent cover being off to actually reach them. For some reason, Adrian suddenly noticed how beautiful Kelly was, and wondered if maybe he was so blinded by hope that he failed to see her best friend. Which is kinda messed up. I've never even had a girlfriend before, pray for me, but even I know that it's pretty messed up to watch your girlfriend die and then think about banging her best friend like 10 minutes later, bro. Like, come on. It's also kind of weird to think about the fact that even Lucia likes Adrian, so basically he gets all the ladies, bro. Like, what the frick? Anyway, Adrian says that they should still open up the vent cover because they'd probably be able to hear the endo coming if it came through the vent, while it could take them by surprise if it came through the door. All the while, Kelly and Lucia were working on the radio, and Adrian took out his pocket knife and began attempting to pry open the grate. We cut over to Wade's perspective, who was thinking about the fact that he had actually been in love with Hope and now she was dead. It really feels like all these teenagers have feelings for each other, bro, like what the frick. Oh yeah, and Joel and Wade had been failing as well. Nothing worked to shut off the fan. But Joel came up with a really dangerous and stupid plan, but one with some merit. The plan may hold some promise if they're able to make it out alive. Joel had recognized that whenever the endo was nearby, it affected the lights, it affected the electricity, so if they could lure it into the room, it could short out the fan. Wade joked that they would surely fit through the furnace in pieces, but Joel was serious. The plan could work if they survived enacting it. We cut back to Lucia's perspective, and they still hadn't been able to get the radio working. They looked around for a manual, and they found an old user's manual which described a bunch of different kinds of robotic endoskeletons. They recognized the one labeled either Mimic 1 or Mimic 2 to have been the one that was stalking them around the Pizzaplex. They were clunky animatronic endoskeletons that had retractable and expandable limbs and a contracting torso so they could fit into pretty much any mascot costume. So basically it seems to be an endoskeleton of a springlock animatronic, basically meaning pressure lied to us, or there are just different types of springlock suits. Supposedly though, if you were to encounter one of these endoskeletons, you should immediately disconnect its power source and disable it. This didn't exactly leave the group in a clear mindset, so they decided to do a little bit of coping and talk about the stuff like their favorite colors and stuff. Jace's was yellow because it reminded him of fuzzy chicks, Kelly's was green as it reminded her of seeds and growing, Lucia's was purple as it was the color of a deep bruise which was painful and real, kind of freaky, but whatever. And Adrian's was blue because it reminded him of the sea and freedom. Lucia then recognized that Jace knew how she felt about Adrian, and she could tell he was jealous. Cutting back over, Joel was wondering whether or not Wade could actually make it here without getting killed. He hoped so, but he didn't know. He had made Wade be the bait because although it was Joel's idea to come here, it was Wade who found the entrance, so according to Joel, it served him right, even though it was way more his fault than Wade's. Over with Wade, he headed to the dining room as it had a lot of space for him to maneuver. However, when the lights started flickering and the footsteps sounded, he tried to run into the kitchen to try and get around the thing, but the kitchen went pitch dark. He ended up having to go back the way he came, grabbing pots and pans on the way, with the endo right behind him. He flung the pots and pans at the endo, hoping to slow it down slightly, and maybe possibly even disconnect a wire and disable it. However, as he tossed the pots and pans, he could see they were just bouncing off it. He kept running around, fell a few times, and the endo had even gotten so close that its claws had stabbed him a few times. He had been losing a lot of blood, and every room he and the endo went into just went black. Eventually, he realized he had to hide somewhere for the endo to get farther away and for him to rest. Extremely begrudgingly, he threw himself into the pile of dismembered body parts. He tried to convince himself that it was a bunch of just sweaty football players, and held his breath as the footsteps grew closer and closer and then stopped. It began moving away, climbing up the stage, and Wade figured that was far enough. The lights came back on, and Wade darted down the hallway, and the endo began following behind him, the lights shutting off once again. Cutting back to Joel's perspective, Wade had gotten back to the furnace room and stumbled into the furnace maintenance chute. The chute went pitch black as Wade's body was dismembered below Joel. However, Joel barely even cared. He was more interested in the fact that the fan above him stopped moving. Joel began climbing up the chute, but he hadn't accounted for how tiny this area was. He had gotten stuck. He couldn't move any more forward, but he also couldn't move back out of it. Where's Ballora when you need her, am I right? The endoskeleton pulled Wade out of the maintenance chute, likely taking his body back to the dining room, and Joel wondered what the hell kind of programming this thing had to do all this stuff. But that was the final thought he had in his life, at least the final coherent one. As the endoskeleton walked out of the room, the electricity returned, causing the fan to pick up speed once again. The fan was so fast that it dug straight through Joel's body, literally slicing him in two. Freaking Captain Carter moment, but Joel was still conscious enough to feel the pain of his body being split in half for a few more seconds as the epilogue finishes off right there. I think this epilogue is great. I love how these epilogues are written, and I really feel like the story these epilogues are telling is really engaging. I don't think the epilogue was as good as the first or third epilogues, but it was definitely better than the second one, which isn't really saying much, but it was just a great installment in this ongoing story. But I want to know your thoughts. What did you think about this epilogue? Let me know in the comments if you didn't enjoy this epilogue, and if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to. To quote Jason Blum, we are dangerously close to 10,000 subscribers, so if you like my content, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe. But with all that being said, I want all of you to have a great final day of 2022, and I'll see you all next year. Bye, guys!